All right. Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell. And today, I've got a great topic I've been actually dying to do. And it all stemmed from this is actually going to be a really interesting episode because I brought in someone I found on Facebook. I brought in a stranger on Facebook, a stranger to me, and I was a stranger to him. He was probably like, "Who the heck is this guy that wants to interview me?" That's how we met. I just messaged him because he posted something in his Facebook group about investing in short-term rentals that I was like, yes. And I'm like, I was so proud that there are other people who felt this way besides me. And I know there's people listening to this who feel the same way. And I wanted to bring this guy in. I don't want to say he's a nobody. I don't want to say he's not a person of significance, but you probably don't know him. And he's just a real estate investor who invests in short-term rentals. He's very successful. He doesn't go and jump in the limelight. He's not up there doing the TikTok dances and the Instagram, reels and all that good stuff. He's not an influencer. He's an average day, I say average day Joe, but he's successful with short-term rentals. And I wanted to bring him on here to hear his experience and his opinions on the topic, the good deal gone bad. He actually named that. I stole that from you, Brian. But anyway, without further ado, Brian Lambert. First off, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, and I'll take it from there, and we'll go from there. So go ahead. Tell us.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Hey, Kenny, man, thank you for the warm welcome. It's an honor to be with you. And it was honestly surprised. I was super surprised to get the invite. And I was really surprised, actually. And because for me, I wrote that post and I was like, oh, this will be an interesting thing to talk about. And so to get an invite was really kind of fun and interesting. Like Kenny said, though, my name is Brian Lambert. I've been investing in real estate since 2002 and have invested in a lot of different ways inside of real estate, done just a very little bit of commercial, had a long-term portfolio for a little while. Flipped close to 100 houses, if not 100 houses, and then bought a short-term rental in 2021, really for my first time after watching Rob Built. I'm not sure how to pronounce.
You know what? I call him Raw Built, but I think it's Row Built too, but I don't really know either. So we're in the same camp, but it's good. I know the videos you're talking about. So
yeah. And I watched all of them, like everybody was on lockdown and I was flipping houses at the time and had a lot of time because it was COVID. And so I watched all of them and I was fascinated by this idea that you could actually run this business with high cash flow inside of a piece of real estate. And I had done some real estate and I had been investing, but I was like, the idea of being able to have very high gross revenue and cash flow on a piece of single family, super, super interesting to me, very interesting. So I bought my first one in 2021 and it had a couple different buildings and structures on it. And I tend and always have sort of tended to, I like challenges. I like things that are sort of different. So I bought this one piece of property. It had 3 buildings on it. One of them was like sort of a cabin, single family residence, but also had this other small little building on it too. And so bought it thinking I could turn one door into 2 doors and did that inside the short-term rental as a vacation rental and a vacation destination inside North Carolina. And it did very well and was shocked at how well it did. And so then from then just sort of kept kind of expanding into the short-term rental world, I guess. So it's been an interesting ride. For sure.
And now most of your properties or all your property, where's your portfolio mainly located?
What I've got some in Western North Carolina. I've got some in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, really just those 2 regions in North Carolina. And some are in vacation destination areas, you would say, Western North Carolina, and some of them are sort of like B and C level markets, which would be a really interesting conversation to have too at some point, just because I find that my B and C level market properties that don't operate as vacation rentals generally cash flow better than the ones that are vacation rentals. So, but maybe another topic for another day, because I am in love with B2C. I am in love with B and C level markets. This one that I'm in right now, actually, I'm in Monroe, North Carolina right now. And this is one that we recently finished. And it's just outside of Monroe. And it is just it has performed very well. And so I've helped some friends of mine also kind of come over here into this area in Monroe and some of the other bean stubble markets around town. And I find that the demand there is pretty good and doesn't require quite as heavy as a upfront investment. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So you've got lots of experience. I want to jump into the post, why I reached out to you, and the main topic today, the good deal gone bad. So high level here, we're not going to be saying names. We're not pointing fingers. We're not going to give addresses or anything like that. But a certain property was kind of posted online by multiple people. Like I said, we're not targeting certain individuals here. We saw it from multiple individuals, and this property was in the high country of North Carolina, and it was this propped up property. I think it was listed at like $695, so $695,000, and it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,000 square feet. According to the layout, we're going to lay out all the information here. Supposedly, it could be 5 bedrooms. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. I'll give my strong opinion on that one in a second too.
Yeah.
But basically, like, there were a lot of certain individuals were posting this property as like this thing can do 175K or more. Like this is like the second coming of short-term rentals in Boone or high country. I don't want to get too much away here.
Yeah.
But like this is like the greatest thing God has given us in the last like week. Like
yeah.
And it was like prime design. And so Brian here, he comes on in his group, okay, not in other people's group, his own group, and I'll share that at the end here, and is like, guys, like, no, and here's why. And he like outlines everything. So first off, let's talk about your reasonings as to why you felt like that property does not have the potential for 175.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I have properties that are performing in that area, and that my properties generally perform very well in that area relative to the competition. So, there are people out here. In fact, I was on with a friend of mine today, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm the top performing property." I don't even know how you look at that. Like, I've got friends that, a good friend of mine in the Raleigh area, she's able to kind of pinpoint where her property ranks on sort of like the over. And where do you get that? Do you know? Is that like an AirDNA thing?
They can be. So like I know like AirDNA might have like the top 10 lists. My company also has like I can see like the top properties in the market as well. So it's kind of like we have like you download a spreadsheet and you can see the top 10 or whatever based off of revenue and bedroom count. So that's probably what they're doing. So
it would be very interesting to see where mine fall, because I genuinely don't know. But I also know what the gross revenue does for mine, and I also know what the sort of the average daily rate for the area is, because I have multiple in that area. I don't just have one; I've got a couple. So so a friend of mine sent me screenshots. Was like, "Hey, look at this gross revenue this thing is projected at." I looked at it instantly and thought, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I actually know what that is because it's right in my backyard. Like I don't just have one over there. Like I've got multiples, and mine are not. They're not like standard. Like they're not the standard like STR product. Like my product is. I tend to do a little bit different things. Like I said early on in the bio, I like challenges, and because I like challenges, the output generally ends up being something that's fairly dynamic, and almost always guarantees a page 1 rank, almost always. And because of that, I'm making it. There is an assumption I'm making, because like I said to you just now, I don't even really know which rank, where I am on that ranking. But because I'm always on page 1 and my occupancy is very high, I make the assumption that I'm probably up there in the top 10, if not top 5. It could be top 1 for all I know, Kenny, because I haven't used your platform and I don't have an AirDNA subscription either, just because there's no real value in it for me. So I saw the post and I was like, okay, gosh, I don't think it's realistic. And I try to make a point in the article that that it was unlikely, not that it was impossible, that it just wasn't necessarily realistic. And then also tried to identify like what a realistic number was for that specific property based on my experience with my own portfolio in that area. And So that's kind of how I arrived at sort of the idea of like this whole deal gone bad. Because investing in like anything, anything has its ups and downs and is based on buyer expectation at the time of purchase, right? It can literally be anything. Like if you buy a stock on the stock market, right, you have a certain expectation that that stock is going to perform in one direction or another if you're buying
Right.
options or whatever. And then, you sort of like have this dream that's built when you buy that investment, whatever it is. And so when I saw this really high estimate for gross revenue, I was like, man, this has the opportunity to be the deal that someone buys and then it goes bad later because it just misses those expectations, if that makes sense. And then, and in my view and in my experience with my own portfolio there, I felt as if it wasn't just going to be a small miss, it was going to be a fairly large miss. But let's be clear, my projections on that same property in the short term was like $100,000. Like, I think it's a good property and I think it's a good buy. And here's why it's a good buy. It's not just a good buy because of the gross revenue. The gross revenue can be really good on it. It's a really good buy because there is a direct comp that sold not more than 4 months ago that prices that house at $805,000. So you can walk in the door there with $105,000 equity. So somebody's giving you $105,000 on that property that you can turn around and use to invest in that property, and you're still at market value. So there's a bunch of reasons why that property is a good property to buy. There's a bunch of reasons, and I'll be completely honest with you. I saw it, and my first thought was, I'm going to buy it. So I reached out to the realtor and I asked for the seller docs. I'm not a broker. I don't really have this huge short-term rental business that I'm running. Like I said, this is kind of a friend of mine that has this property over here, and I started out by helping him out. And now we're renovating a couple different pieces on this land to make them sort of dynamic short-term rentals. But I don't really have skin in the game. So I reached out to her because I was like, I've got a portfolio in the area. I have a team in the area now. I'm going to pick this one up, or I might pick this one up. Looked at it, looked over the numbers, and then decided there's just too many other things that I want to do this year than that short-term rental. So anyway, that's sort of how I got to it. And I know, like, dude, I know that house will do $100,000. I know it will. Like, I'm not even guessing. And it'll do $100,000 with very modest improvements. So let me be clear about what a deal gone bad means with, relative to this discussion, because at $175,000, in my view, it's an unlikely projection for that property. So a deal gone bad means you bought it with the expectation of hitting 175 for that one property, right? That's what your expectations were. If you end up hitting 100, that's a good deal. It's a good property. It's performing very well, right? A lot of people would die for those numbers, not die, but they would, be willing to invest
Yeah.
at that rate.
You're right.
Right. They're willing to invest at that rate. But because their numbers are not at that top number that was presented, it's going to feel, it could or has the potential to feel like a sucker punch. Not that was the intention. And again, I saw that property floating around by a couple different people. And so it wasn't, it's not necessarily it's not any one person at all, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the idea that expectations are bound to be missed. And so all I was saying was, look, even if you miss this thing, it's the deal gone bad. It's still a good deal. It's still a good deal for somebody to buy. Here's the other thing I'll say about that. Go ahead.
No. I want to hear it. I just want to emphasize too, like most properties though, it's kind of the other way around where it's like, people are hoping that it's going to be a decent deal, but it doesn't even break even. There's a lot of people out there who are buying today where even if they over project on revenue, I mean, it's just not even going to make sense because they underestimated expenses, or it's just not going to do the revenue that they were hoping for, which we'll talk about in a second in some of these markets. But it really comes down to being realistic, and I think personally kind of conservative too in your projections. That's why I know you don't like my pro forma that I use, my underwriting tool. I have 3 columns I call it good, better, best modeling. It's like what's it going to do in the worst case to the best case scenario, not what's it going to do in the best case scenario, and we're going to hit that. I just think that you're, like you said, you're setting yourself up for a punch in the gut. So I love that. But yeah, continue on.
Well, and I think there's several, and this is where it's like the market's changing, right? It's shifting.
Right.
Everybody knows it. Like if anybody says to you like, hey, we're still in sort of like the heyday of the short-term rental market, like you should absolutely have serious questions about whoever it is that's telling you that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just true, right? And so it's like you have to sort of like settle into the reality of where we're at in the cycle. And if you look at it in terms of like the gold rush, which is like a super easy analogy, right? Like when the gold rush happened, everybody could go out there and they could grab their sort of their panning pan or whatever that thing is, and they could go out there and pan for gold in the local creek, right? The cost of entry was like nothing. It didn't cost anything. It was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as all that gold dust starts washing out, then later on, it's more difficult to get at the gold, right? So then you have to have a higher capital investment to go in there and get the gold. Then you're looking up veins and trying to, dig a hole in the ground to see if you can figure out where the gold is. And the same thing is happening now. Like you had this heyday, which was like 2020 through 2022, where it was like you can throw something on the market and it's going to pop. It almost doesn't even matter what it is because the volume of travelers that were out there and people that were kicked out of their offices because of COVID and then traveling to work was just, we had never seen it before. Like the volume of those people was crazy. And so now the market's kind of settling back down. Everybody's kind of getting back to work. And now there's a whole lot less travelers and the same, if not more, units out there to be booked. So that settling requires a higher capital investment to find the property, which I think is probably the game that you're playing with SDR Insights, right? Now you got to go out there and you got to work a little extra hard. You got to pay a little bit more to figure out a valuation. So there's that sort of like CapEx that is required that's a bit more than it was before. But now, even more than ever, there is this sort of like intellectual capital that's required. Like you have to go out there and you have to be smart about how you're approaching every end of the transaction from the very beginning all the way to the very end when you push that button on Airbnb or VRBO or your direct booking site and you go live for the first time trying to earn that first dollar. And that intellectual investment, that's expensive. You got to get that one way or the other. And so if you're basically relying on brokers who are all trying to do good work for good people, and most of them are trying to do the right thing and follow through. And, they're trying to be responsible with the fiduciary responsibility that they have. But at the end of the day, as an investor, it's our job to sit back and then ask those intellectual questions, ask the smart questions about whether or not this is a good investment. So when you start digging into any investment, there are holes in those investments that begin to reveal where the opportunity is fiscally as an investment. So this particular property, again, I looked at it because I was like, maybe I'm going to buy it. I don't know. I need to take a deeper look. I started looking at the numbers and started figuring out why it was performing so low. And it was only performing, 30, 40 grand a year. So you start digging in and asking the question, why? And you start looking through seller docs and you're like, oh gosh, there are these 4 or 5 reasons why it's not performing well. And if I can start knocking off some of those reasons, I can take that 30 to 40 grand that it was producing, make a couple modest improvements, and I can ramp that revenue up to where it ought to be because I'm a half decent operator. And I know the questions to ask. I hope that makes sense, but it's a lot.
No, that's good. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
It was listed. This was also kind of in this post. I thought that was really interesting. Is it was listed as a 3-bed, 3-bath. Okay. 2,000 square foot cabin. All right. Apparently there are bonus rooms that it could theoretically be a 5-bedroom. Should it be a 5-bedroom?
I think it all depends on how you look at the property, right? Because when you look at an investment property, you got to look at it in 2 different ways. You have to look at it and you have to value the real asset, the real property, right? The real estate itself. There's a value to that piece of real estate. And that piece of real estate has a real value that's associated with fixed and standard terms. okay, that are not set by anybody else. Those terms are fixed by the local government, right? The zoning board,
Right.
the coding board, the building code, like the county sets those terms. When you're looking at buying it, you have to look at it with those fixed terms in mind. Mainly, a bedroom being, in the case of this, in this county, and really in the state of North Carolina, does it have a window? Does it have a window that operates, and does it have a closet in it? If it has those two, and has it been inspected by a county inspector? If the answer to that is yes on all three accounts, that's a bedroom when you buy the property, right? So the
Mhm.
first way that you have to value any short-term rental or rental specifically is you have to value that one fixed asset as a piece of real estate that has a real value with fixed standard terms. The other way you have to value it is as a business, because that's what it is. You're not just buying the real estate, you're buying the business. And when you value the business, you have to use a different set of terms. And this is where it kind of gets a little fun. And this is where the margin is, where you can, be a smart investor, and then you can dial up the revenue a little bit on it. And here's why: because the short-term rental market is just in its infancy, right? It is a baby. It literally still has fuzz on its head. It doesn't even have hair yet. It's just an infant,
Mhm.
which is awesome because that means all the terms are malleable. So a bedroom for a short-term rental doesn't have to have a closet and a window that operates so you can get in and out of it. A bedroom is something that sleeps people, right?
Right.
So, and that's where the discrepancy comes in this discussion. So, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at buying it as a 3-bedroom house because it has 3 rooms with a closet and with a window for egress. The discussion that was had in the comments was whether or not it was 5 bedrooms. Well, and the discussion was about the valuation of max gross revenue potential, really, is what the discussion
Right.
was. And so when we're discussing it in those terms, yeah, it's a 5-bed short-term rental on any of the platforms. On Airbnb, it's going to be listed as a 5-bedroom because there are beds in 2 of those
Right.
bonus rooms downstairs. So does that make sense? I mean,
Yep.
yeah. But I think that's an
But
important distinction to make too, especially in terms of the 2 different ways you have to look at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. And yeah, some really good points there. I So what I want to add to that is for everyone listening to this, just because it can be a 5-bedroom doesn't mean it should be a 5-bedroom. And here's why for this particular property. So when I looked at this property, number one, I see 2,000 square feet. Okay. Now they're providing, whoever's promoting this property to sell it is showing comps of 5 bedrooms because it said, yeah, it could be a 5-bedroom, which, Brian's saying it can. I'm saying it could be, it's got the space to do that on Airbnb. But the problem though is the comps they're showing, number one was like not a 5-bedroom, it was like a 6 or 7. But even the other one that was a 5-bedroom, it's an actual 5-bedroom house. The square footage is much bigger. It can host more people. It's meant to hold more people. And so, and then when you start breaking down, okay, cool. Like if I'm trying to do revenue of 175K or more, what I need to add to this property, what it needs to, do to function at that high level, you need game rooms, you need theater rooms, you need a bunch of things, you need space. This property doesn't have that. And so, although you could cram a bunch of beds in there and make it a legal 5-bedroom, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to do the same as legit sized 5-bedroom houses. It's just the square footage. I see it all the time in other markets too. Brian, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the Poconos or some of these other areas. It's renowned for having these like 1,400, 1,300 square foot houses that are like 4 or 5 bedrooms, and if you go in there, they're super tiny. It's like, this isn't really a 4 or 5. Like and guess what? They don't do the revenue like the other normal size 4 and 5 bedrooms. People see it. They know, oh, well, that's kind of small, and sure, it can host more people, but you now have kind of more of a value property rather than like
That's
a
right.
nice luxury property.
It's more of a budget, right? It's the difference between a hostel and a luxury hotel, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is value that. And I think there's actually a place in the market for that too. There is a tier in the market for that. I don't know that that tier is going to bring 175K.
No, it's not. I'm going to
Maybe.
say it. It's
Well,
not. Well, it depends
well,
on where, but like I'm thinking of that
well,
property, you know?
I mean, it's,
So,
I think
yeah.
there's two parts, right? There's where in the world is it that we're talking about? Are we talking about Dubai, right? Or like the Maldives? Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But so there's where, but then there's also how quick. And that was the other thing that I was desperately trying to convey, and I'm not sure I did a good enough job in my piece that I wrote, was that there is a time to gross revenue that is a real expense too. If you can look at it like an expense. In that time to gross revenue, there's a sort of maturation that's required to hit gross revenue. There just
Mhm.
is, right? I mean, and the more you can spend a whole lot more money and try and like max out that really, really high top end gross revenue, but it might take you twice as long to get there. And in that period of taking you from where you are today to where you're gonna be to that gross max revenue point that's somewhere out there in the future, there's a whole lot of risk between here and there. There's a lot
Mhm.
of risk, like Hurricane Helene type risk, that can put a major dent in your market that can prevent you from getting there as fast as you need to, or worse, maybe prevent you from getting there at all. And so, when it comes to these like these huge, like these massive investment on these properties, I always try to measure how long is it going to take me to get there, right? Because every dollar I spend now on the construction phase, remodel phase, design phase, whatever, like every dollar I spend now, I got to go back and I got to get that later on. I have to go
Mhm.
back and get it. And then if it's going to take me 10 years and I spend 100% more than I would have spent to get 75% of that gross max revenue, then, and I can get that in a 3 year period, I'll go and get that money in 3 years over spending 200% more to get 100% of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because
no,
there's
it does.
like
It does.
the
Yeah.
time element is big for me
Yeah.
on
You've got
these
holding
strategies.
costs. You've got the, like the getting everything, the cost to actually get it together and launch and everything. I mean, it takes months to do those big types of projects. One thing I want to touch on too is, and you mentioned this in the post as well about ADR for the market. And
Mhm.
there's an assumption going around that if I just throw in everything in the kitchen sink on a property, that it's all of a sudden going to do it's just going to blast the ADR through the roof and it's going to have this high revenue potential and do crazy numbers like 175, 200 on a 700K purchase. If I drop $300,000 into the property, not the down payment, but just the amenities and decor. Um,
Mhm.
but the reality is, like, I mean, you tell me, is that possible in some of these markets, like the high country, like a Boone?
I mean, I can only speak to my experience, right? Like I can
Sure.
speak to my experience, and I can say that we've done some fairly cool things with the ones that are in my portfolio. Um, I feel as though like you have to look at the market as a regional local market, and you have to look
Mhm.
at it as you have to look at each sector of that each column of that market, those little sub markets or whatever. You have to look at it as having a cap for each part of it. So like a 5 bedroom in that area of Boone, um, you have to look at it as having a market cap. And like I said before, Boone is not the Maldives. The Boone is not. It's not
Yeah.
Dubai. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's
not
not.
not
It's.
not it's the Aspen of North Carolina right now.
I
It's
mean,
just
there's a lot of truth to that. I like that, but
yeah.
I think that it's not gonna. You're not gonna see a $25,000 a night 5 bedroom in Boone. You're just not gonna see that. Um, but what would a house do in that area that had, in my post, I wrote down like pickleball courts and like outdoor, like huge outdoor
Yep.
living spaces and all that stuff. What would a property do in that area that had those things? Um, that's a 5 bedroom that's 2,000 square feet, that has $300,000 investment in it. I don't know. And I'm hesitant to say that it won't. I even tried to say in my article that I don't know that I won't do it. I just feel as though it's very unlikely. Um, yeah. So I just feel it's unlikely.
No,
I mean, I'm not going to say
here,
it won't do it, because I listen, I've been wrong about it a lot in my life, and I'm happy to be wrong about this too.
but this is really important because what you're saying is like, as an experience about, I want everyone to like kind of take in this moment for a second and listen to what I'm about to say. Like what you just said is you don't know. And the reason why you don't know is because it's not been proven. Therefore, it's like, and it's highly unlikely, but it's risky. It's gambling. That's what it is. It's not real estate investing, it's gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when you go in and you make these assumptions that these properties and this whatever model, like I'm going to over amenitize, that's what I call it, shotgunning amenities, like add everything, putting pickleball courts and all this other stuff into things. When you go into these markets where it hasn't been done, you're not basing it on data. You're not basing your decision based on like facts. It's based on assumptions. And it really comes down to your confidence, your gut feeling that you're going to pull it off. But if an experienced investor like Brian, who knows the markets, like, I don't know, I'm not risking that money because I can go into other markets and know for certain if I can do that. And that's the thing that people don't understand, because the problem I have, I'm about to rant. So watch out, Brian. Not for you, but like
I'm going to pour myself some coffee while you're ranting.
There you go. The problem I have with people posting properties like that is they're posting out to everybody. They're posting out to people who are like in California, New York, and Jersey, and all these places who are like looking to buy their first property in it to be successful. And they know nothing about Boone, but they see this one and they see, oh, wow, like here are some comps and I can invest into this and I have some capital invest into it. And it seems like this is going to work. But the reality is it's not proven. We don't know. And it's incredibly risky doing that. And so
it absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just like, I know we talked about it at the beginning, but there's diminishing returns for every dollar you put into a property, and all markets aren't equal. You might be able to pull that off in Asheville. I really like, I know the markets decently. I don't have any properties there, but like I know them decently from the data. I don't think you're going to get the same results in Boone because the traffic is different. It's just much lower, right? Does Boone have a major airport that's like travels all over? No, it doesn't, right? I think it might have an airport, but like it's not like this major one compared to like Asheville, which still isn't that major, but brings in people from all over. And so you got to look at all these other factors of who is going there, the amount of people traveling there, to truly try to figure out revenue potential. But at the end of the day, look, if experienced investors are going, I don't see it, and they have no, like Brian, he doesn't have any pokers in the fire on this one. He doesn't get commission or paid or anything if you buy that property or not. They're going, I don't see it. If I'm an investor, I'm probably going, look, yeah, this one ain't for me. I'm gonna look at another one if I'm trying to do that high revenue potential. But like you said, I like the appreciation on that one, just purely pick up with 105. And then 100K on a 700 purchase. That's good. I know some people want better, but that's good. There's pros and cons to all this. And so, What are your thoughts on that?
Especially it depends on what sort of deal you get on it, right? I mean, like if you can figure out some way to kind of get in there with some sort of creative financing deal, then all of a sudden you're like, hang on a second. Wow, this $100,000 on a $700,000 acquisition starts to look pretty doggone good, especially if you can do it without spending another 50 to get that $100,000, right? But I want to say 2 points about what you were talking about before, because I think there's two really interesting things, which is like, okay, so if we're talking about like 700 plus 300, right? That's $1 million. That's $1 million to make $175,000. So what if you just buy it for 700 and then don't spend the 300 on it and it makes 75 to 100 for you, and you do something else with that 300, like, I don't know, buy something somewhere else, instead of putting all your eggs in that one basket. I think that's another relevant question to ask. But this is where it boils down to whatever your goals are, right? Because there is something, I think there is value in, if you have very deep pockets, right? You've got an unlimited cash supply and you got to store that money somewhere. All of a sudden, that $300,000 and the $700,000 acquisition, that might make sense because you're going to keep it and your goal is to store money. That's different, right? And what you're doing is you are creating a moat around that property with every amenity that you add. You are creating a moat. You are like it's like building a castle and building walls and then building a moat around it. Because when the market does shift, if it does shift, those, I would imagine, and Kenny, I mean, you have the data, right? You look at way more stuff than I'm able to look at. But I would imagine that as the pricing begins to peel down, those ones that do have the greater offerings and the greater amenities and that have had the $300,000 investment, I would imagine they probably are going to perform better than the ones that don't, if you're looking at apples to apples. I would imagine.
Yeah.
But
no, 100%.
But I think that goes without saying one other thing too, because I got to say this too, like not every property is a short-term rental, right? Mm-hmm. And there are intrinsic immovable qualities that make a property outperform other properties in a region that you cannot add any amenities to improve their average daily rate. They're just going to hit the market cap. They're just going to hit it. They're sitting on top of a mountain somewhere. They've got 360-degree views. They've got a hot tub on two different sides of the house, and it's going to hit the gross revenue just because you can't replicate that everywhere. Like a house that's underneath the water in like I keep saying, the Maldives. I've never been there. I have no interest in it. It's literally the first place that comes up in my brain. Like, but if you're in one of those, like a submarine house, like it's going to hit the max revenue. Like it has something, it's intrinsic, that is like architecturally interesting. There is a design element to it that is going to require that it stays on page one because everybody's going to click the dang link. So, and in those cases, I want to buy up for that because you can't put a pickleball court there that's going to actually run the revenue up. You can't put in like a movie theater that's going to run the revenue up. You got it because the place has intrinsic aesthetic quality to it that is going to hit the max revenue. I would rather buy that property over the one that I have to put a whole nother house in. Because at like $300,000, dude, $300,000, you know what I could get for $300,000? Like if you told me right now, hey, I'm going to write you a check for $300,000, dude, I can tell you 3 different areas in North Carolina. I'm buying lots and I'm putting small structures on, and I'm running up 2-night stays on really dynamic, incredibly small spaces for couples to come enjoy. I can tell you right now, I can name 3 counties right now in North Carolina that I'm going to buy 3 lots, and I'm buying 3 structures, and I'm putting them over there. So, and then it diversifies my portfolio.
Right.
So that was the one point. And then you had this other thing that you spurred this other comment about. This is the other thing. Not all value adds are the same. They don't all have the same value. And so one of the things that I learned when I was flipping houses, there's these dumb little things you sort of just pick up, right? And you get them just from like the weirdest little spots. But like I'd never put, don't ever put glass in showers for a flip. Because people walk through the house and they look around and they don't think about whether or not there's glass in the showers. But the glass in the showers are very expensive. I mean, you can spend a couple $1,000s on a glass shower real quick. So, put your money into the places that are going to bring back an ROI. If you can't see or envision how that dollar is going to come back to you, don't spend it. I do put glass showers in short-term rentals. As a note, though. But but that same principle applies though. Like if you're going to put in a pickleball court, maybe it makes sense. Maybe there's a regional pickleball like championship that happens there. I don't know. And it makes sense for you to put it in, and you can see how you're going to double your revenue on it because it's a pickleball court.
Right. So. Right. But in the mountains ski market, probably not. I'm going to tell you right now. Like I would definitely be investing in other things besides a pickleball court, in some of these markets. So
you can't buy long range views. You can't buy long range views. If it doesn't have it, you don't have it. That property had it, not long range views. It had mountain views, but that property had it. Yeah. And man, dude, I feel like the listing agent on that property needs to give me some sort of like marketing fee, because I looked at the Zillow listing before and after I put that post on there, And I swear, all the view count doubled, and so did the saves, just on
Oh,
that one
easily.
article.
Yeah. Everybody's like, wait, yeah, going back and forth. So I think it's still
Yeah,
on the market though.
is it?
So well,
Well,
let's see. Well, actually I don't have
yeah,
it. Never mind. I'll see afterwards. So we'll let you guys know. All right, Brian, as we're kind of wrapping up here, man, this has been really great. Last question for you. How can so the question I asked everybody, a tip, piece of advice on how people can cash flow positive with their short-term rentals. Could be anything.
yeah. Know the market. It's the very last thing I said in my market. As an investor, you're responsible for your money. That is your money that you're investing. When you choose a broker, you're going to choose somebody who's smart. And even some of the folks almost all the brokers I know are very smart people. And most of them are going to take your interests at heart. They have a fiduciary
Mm,
responsibility to do that because they're investing, you're taking their advice. But here's what that means for you as an investor. When you invest in a piece of property, there is absolutely no one on the planet that is going to look after your money the way that you will. You look after your money better than anybody else. You have to be your own advocate. And here's what that requires. That requires that you spend the time to learn the investment strategy. So if you don't know the short-term market, get in there and learn it. There is free information right now because this is an emerging market. There's so much free information out there everywhere. Go out there and find it. There are plenty of Facebook groups out there that offer paid services, I'm sure, and then offer open and honest discussion and dialogue so that you can learn about what's happening in the short-term rental market everywhere. So know your market. And before you ever even begin to think about buying a short-term rental or any other investment for that matter, man, think about what you want out of it before you start looking. Because the minute you start looking, it's very easy to be swayed by, the bling, no matter what that bling is or what form it comes in. So know what you want out of it before you get into it. Because the minute you start spending money, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. It can be very easy to get distracted.
Oh, absolutely. And oh, we got to get this now. We got to do that. Or I saw that
Yes,
they have all these amenities too. We need to add these things. So I agree. So yeah, know your numbers too beforehand. So
absolutely. Know
yeah,
what you want to get out of it, right? I mean, do you want how much you like? If you put 700K down, what do you want to make on the 700K every year? What's the
right.
actual goal? Yeah,
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 I love it. I love it. Brian, honestly, man, this has been a treat and a pleasure. This is really good. I know it's always fun bringing somebody on who has I swear he told me he had zero podcasting experience. So this was awesome. You did fabulous. This has been great
thanks, man. I
conversation.
appreciate that.
Pleasure to get to know you better too. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
well,
but
I'm glad you're in my group, man. Please, feel free
yeah,
to jump in there. We always want really open, honest, and direct
yeah,
dialogue as much as we
yep,
can. So yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate any and all insight and
Yeah. So some of those discussions, I'm like, I gotta bow out. I don't not because I'll get some angry messages or whatever from somebody, but yeah, no.
right.
As I said, I love that you said. I was like, man, we need more people like that. More
Yeah,
people standing up who are just saying the right things instead of pumping sunshine and rainbows and unicorn on everything. So it needs
yeah,
to, the truth needs to be said. So I love it. I love it, Brian.
yeah.
And
Oh
thank you,
yeah.
everybody. I hope you found this episode helpful and you learned some stuff from it. I learned a lot too, and just talking to experienced investors and hearing their story, not just the influencers and the gurus out there, but the real people who are doing the day-to-day investing right next to you in the same markets. It's great. It's great to hear from them as well. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of Cash Flow Positive.